Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Curcio and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. The new catalog is out, and among all the wonderful things that are in there, there's an embossing folder that I'm quite fond of, and it's called The Brick Wall. I wanted to create a project that looked vintagey and old with a little bit of a graffiti look, so this is what I've come up with. I can't wait to show you how to create the distress look with the mortar, so let's get over to my stamp table and get started. Today I'm using the new stamp set called Friendly Wishes, and I'm going to be using this greeting down here at the bottom that says, "I'm always here for you." But I have to tell you, I think that any of these would work very well with this card. You'll need several pieces of cardstock. This is chocolate chip, measuring 5.5 by 8.5. This is basic black, measuring 5.25 by 4. This is Cajun Craze, measuring 3 3/4 by 5. And then a piece of Very Vanilla measuring 3 inches by 4 inches. Now, I realize that's a lot of information, so if you head over to my blog, all the dimensions are there for you as well as still photos. I also cut 21 inches of linen thread. So I've mounted my words, and I'm going to use Stays-On ink for this, and I'll show you why in just a few minutes. And that's going to go about 2/3 towards the top, because I'm going to leave a little room at the bottom for the linen thread, and I'm going to stamp that here. Next, we're going to be using the Big Shot and the brand new embossing folder called Brick Wall. Ooh, how I love this. Now, important thing for you to know that if you want the mortar to look realistic so that it goes into the bricks, it's going to be word side up. And I definitely want to make sure that I've got it lined up so that my bricks are fairly straight. Now, this is a 6x6 embossing folder, and you're going to want to be careful when you crank it through because I've already done that. So let me show you what I mean. One clear mat on the bottom, one clear mat on the top so that we have a sandwich. It's protecting the embossing folder. You want to make sure that your embossing folder does not stick out along the perimeters of your clear mat. Otherwise, it's going to get caught in the Big Shot. Ask me how I know that. I did that once. And then all you're going to do is you're going to crank this through. I'm going to do the same thing with the Cajun Craze cardstock. Next, I'm using a wedge of sponge. Now, they do get stained with usage. I just use a little soap and water and let them air dry, and you can use them in different colors. I'm going to be using 4 different shades of ink: Crumb Cake, Cajun Craze, Cherry Cobbler, and Chocolate Chip. Now, you can use one sponge for this as long as you go light to dark, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I'm starting with the Crumb Cake. So I'm going to dab a little bit of my sponge in here, and I like to dab a little bit off. I want to make sure it's not too strong. And then with a circular motion, I am just going to cover the cardstock to kind of age it and get the bricks to look a little more real, and it's also going to bring them out on the paper. The embossing does make the paper raised in the areas of the image, which gives it a more realistic tone. I'm switching to the Cajun Craze. Same thing. I'm dipping in here and dipping off. If you're thinking I'm transferring ink from one to the other, I'm really not, because I'm going from the lighter ink to the darker ink. Cherry Cobbler is next. This is going to give my bricks a little bit of that red tone, that antique kind of coloring. And you're going to notice that I'm just doing this sporadically. I'm not covering the whole thing. Last but not least, I have Chocolate Chip. Same exact method. Now, this is a darker color, so I want to make sure that I'm not going to get too carried away. Have it. Now we have our bricks. But here's the secret on how to get it to look even more realistic. I'm going to use the Chocolate Chip ink pad again, and I'm flipping it over and I'm squeezing from the back. Stampin' Up! Created the stamp case so that it was flexible. By squeezing, I've allowed residual ink from here to into the well. I like to squeeze the tip to make sure it's not soaking wet before I start. Now I'm going to pick up a little color from here, and I'm going to really water it down because I don't want it to be too dark. And I am literally going to drag it in those mortar lines. And listen, there's nothing neat about this. And this is why we used Stays-On versus Memento ink. Because if you had used Memento, when you go to watercolor, all of this would run. Now, if you have areas like I've just done that are not perfect, like you've gone over onto the brick, even better yet. We want this to look almost graffiti. We don't want this to look perfect. So there you go. Doesn't that look more realistic now? To clean your aqua painter, all you're going to do is you're going to give this a squeeze over your Stampin' Scrub, like so that water runs through the bristles. And then I just give it a dab on the wet and the dry side. And if you were going to change colors, I always check it to make sure that it's clear. Make sure your bristles are put together before you recap it. You would hate to split those hairs. So still with the chocolate chip ink, I'm going to use the sponge again. Remember, this was the last ink we used, so we're not worrying about transferring a darker color to a lighter color. And I'm going to go over this one as well, just to kind of age this a little bit. Here's the linen thread. I'm going to start with a loose end here, and I'm going to wrap this around several times. And then all I'm going to do is bring this underneath and make a knot. You're going to notice on my original card that I have a little bit of a loop here, and let me show you how I did that. You're actually going to start like you're making a bow. And instead of pulling the loop to make a bow, you're going to pull it all the way through. And then you're just going to pull. And that'll give you a little bit of a loop. I just used my paper snips to give that a trim. Now on the back, I'm going to go ahead and use dimensionals. And I'm going to do one in each corner. And I'm going to do one in the center. I'm going to take the paper backing off, and you're going to notice I'm using my fingernail to push inside the center of the dimensional. This is a great tip. It actually lifts the paper for you to make it easier to get those off. That's going to get mounted on here. I used the Essentials hardware clips, and I took out the one that looks like the arrow. There's a lot of fun different images in here, an and per stand and a normal paper clip. Really a great buy for the money. And I'm just going to clip this here at the very top of my card. Obviously, if you don't like that or you don't have it, that's optional. This is going to get mounted on the basic black cardstock. And because my cardstock is embossed, I'm going to be a little bit more generous with my adhesive than I typically am, because I want to make sure I get in all those little nooks and crannies. This piece will get more adhesive, and that will get mounted on here as the base of my card. I always flip it over and rub from the back just in case there's ink in my hands, because there always is. So here's the one we just made, and here's the one I made originally. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday for another video. Have a great week, everyone.